You guys want me to start I
Okay.
started the recording. Okay, let me move things around for a sec. It's currently 8:17.
Mhm.
Okay. Hello and welcome to panel number three's podcast presentation. I'm Augustus.
I'm Sam.
I'm Catherine.
I'm Abby.
I'm Ollie.
Today, we're going to be discussing some of the problems that we face as students during these unprecedented pandemic times. Three of these problems are as follows. Number one, adjusting back into the traditional in-person schooling format after having spent a year and a half learning the new independent study at home format is difficult because we suddenly have much less free time. Number two, the duration of time it takes to commute to and from campus has increased substantially since the COVID restrictions have been lifted. And last but far from least, number three, being a transfer student during COVID is very difficult and comes with a plethora of its own stressors.
Segueing from what Augustus was talking about, being a transfer, at Dominican, there are certain requirements for being a part of their honors program. Two of the most prominent ones being a student would need a 3.5 GPA or above, and also taking specific courses here. When I had applied and was accepted, I sufficed the GPA requirement and met with an advisor. During my academic advising session, I got registered for my classes and had got them confirmed for the semester. However, I was not informed that I was able to take honors program courses my first semester. Therefore, I was not registered for the honors versions of the classes that I need to meet the requirements for the program and the core classes for Dominican. This means I would have to take my honors courses starting next semester when I could have had them all done already. I could have had them all. I could have had half of them done already if I was clearly informed. COVID-19 last year was a hindrance for me getting in contact with people for help. As a new transfer student, it would have been helpful to know which resources were available for me. It would have made the transition a lot more cohesive and thoroughly understood for all the other transfers as well.
Similar to Catherine, when I was looking at Dominican, I pretty easily was above the GPA requirement for transfer students. And I had accumulated credits from two different schools before coming to Dominican. And so I was led to believe that I would transfer in, be even ahead of where I was supposed to be because I took extra credits each semester at both of my previous schools. And after I got into Dominican, it was I think it was a few months, might have been one in between 1 to 2 months after I initially got in, that I was informed that they only take a certain amount of credits, and there are some classes that I had to take at Dominican that were lower level classes that I should have already finished if I had been a traditional freshman and sophomore at Dominican. So instead of coming in to Dominican ahead of where I should be entering my junior year, I should have had around 70 or 75 credits. I transferred in with 58, which actually puts me behind what the traditional incoming junior should have. And so I had to quickly register at another junior college and take two summer courses to catch up so that I wouldn't fall behind while I was trying to get my degree and make sure I graduate on time. And with all of that going through, it was really difficult and stressful to make sure I was taking the right classes in summer school, making sure that everything got like everything on my transcripts got sent to Dominican properly and on time, and that they received all my stuff on time. Another big thing was that I had to take in the spring 2 English classes at the same time because Dominican, I was told that I had to have a certain amount of English credits transferring in, and I didn't have that. They didn't accept it from my first school, so I had to double up in the spring. And all that was just to make sure that I would be able to be at Dominican, be an academic junior, and stay eligible for sports.
When I was
in the process of transferring schools. I felt like I had to get it right this time, but the pandemic made that very difficult. I made my decision to transfer from the University of Montana because I didn't like being in a place that was so different from where I grew up. I went there to play soccer and I loved playing soccer there, but I just didn't see myself there for 4 years. I had no idea where I was going to transfer, but I knew that I wanted to stay in California. At the time that I was transferring, most campuses were still shut down and they were not allowing tours. Because of this, it took me longer to narrow down what schools I was actually interested in, and I didn't want to make the same mistake of picking a place that wasn't the right fit for me. So I ended up waiting until schools were opening back up. I was only able to tour a few schools, but there were still a lot of restrictions. I wasn't allowed in any buildings, and like a lot of the rules were still pretty vague. Near the summer, I finally made my decision to transfer to Dominican, but I had a difficult time getting in touch with a counselor that could help me. I waited a few weeks for a response and finally set up a meeting with her, but by the time I ended up registering for courses, the options were really limited and I up for what was available. I was on the wait list for a few, and one of my classes got canceled right before school started, so I had to find another class to take in order to be considered as a full-time student. In the end, it all worked out, but at some points I was really stressed about having enough credits or being able to take what I was interested in. And transferring schools is pretty stressful, but the process, or transferring schools is stressful, but I think that if the school's a little bit more responsive, the process would have been a lot smoother.
So it seems like one of the main problems that you guys share is making sure that your credits are accredited for Dominican and that they actually accept the classes that you've already worked to complete.
Yeah, when I first reached out to them and applied, it wasn't really mentioned. I know that a lot of colleges do have some specific um, courses that they say that they want you to take at the school, but I really wasn't prepared. Like I was prepared to take courses from Dominican that they said are required, but I was not ready to, or I wasn't aware that like I would transfer credits and they would say, oh no, we don't take those. So because my first school, George Fox, was a small Christian school, a lot of our English courses and a few of our other courses were steeped around religious requirements that that school had. And so when I went to transfer my English credit from freshman year, Dominican didn't take it because it didn't fall under their idea or whatever their curriculum means for a freshman English course, which is why I had to end up doubling up. And I didn't know that until I think I had already registered for classes in the spring because I was transferring pretty late. And one of our coaches sent me a text and said, oh, by the way, these are all the credits you have to have transferred in or else you can't be eligible to play. And that was like 2 or 3 days after I'd already registered for classes. So I had to go back, redo that entire thing. I got on a wait list for both English classes because I originally didn't know that I needed to have those. And I'm pretty sure like I had set up like 3 or 4 meetings with my counselor at that school. And she had to go in and like basically like plead with the professors to let me into their class. And then she had to talk to the academic like board or whoever like makes the rules on what you can take at one time to get permission to let me take 2 English classes at the same time. So like there would be like a week where I'm just like emailing her back and forth and we like zoomed daily to just talk about like what progress she made because we were basically afraid that I wasn't going to be able to transfer and I'd have to stay another year, which we didn't really want to do. And then I just remember the whole thing being really stressful and I really had no idea what I was doing, especially through COVID. Like my school at the time was all online, so I didn't know anyone at the school in person or anything. So like all the help I got was through Zoom. And so it was pretty stressful not to be able to go and talk to someone like in person and figure out what's going on. Like she had to be the one to communicate it for me. I couldn't talk to them because of their schedules, or they just didn't have the time to do it. And so it was really difficult to make sure I had everything done by the time I needed it to get done, to transfer to Dominican, to be in time to get the class I wanted, all that. So yeah.
And problem number two, the duration of time it takes to commute to and from campus has increased substantially. Here's Abigail talking more about that.
So commuting to school, it started when we had to move out of the dorms during spring of 2019. And we were basically forced to move out mid-semester. And I was currently living in Edge Hill, and we had to continue finishing the semester online, unfortunately. And when the semester ended, my parents decided for me to commute to school whenever it was required for us to go back in person due to COVID reasons. I currently live in San Francisco area, where Dominican is about 22 to 25 miles away going to and from my house. It takes about 40 minutes for me to go to school and about 45 minutes to an hour to go back home from school. But coming from San Francisco, traffic is super unpredictable. Some days it honestly took me almost 2 hours to get to school, and that caused me to totally miss a whole class. And this semester, my schedule's super late, so I end class around 6 p.m. every day of the week. And I typically get home pretty late in the evening. And that also like causes me to have less time to do schoolwork and to finish my homework. And by commuting, time management is really everything.
And I'm totally going through a very similar situation. I live about 42 miles north of campus, so I'm commuting 4 times a day, 40 miles there and back. And in the morning, the traffic isn't too bad, but there is traffic. It takes me about an hour to get there. And on the way back, it takes me about an hour and 45 minutes because it's bumper to bumper for about 45 minutes in there. And I'm not the only one having this problem. One of my colleagues from the Civic Action Fellowship that I got a chance to talk to about this, his name is Ryan Purcell. He lives in Napa, 35 miles away. And he's also gotten to see as there's more and more cars on the road each day that he's driving to school. So his commute time has doubled and then doubled again since he was doing his volunteer hours back during summer when COVID restrictions were being set in place. When I asked Ryan how he plans on adapting to this new situation, he told me that he's been looking into utilizing the public transit systems. There's a bus stop that's right in front of his house, and if he takes the bus from Napa to San Rafael, he can then walk 15 minutes and get to school. So his idea to use the train or bus systems would help us from sitting through the dreadful bumper to bumper traffic for a couple hours a day. But ultimately the transit fare does add up, and you don't have your vehicle, which is kind of a bummer when you live 40 miles away.
Would either of you guys consider living on campus? Abby, I know you're graduating, but if it was cheaper, because I know a lot of guys that I know that have moved off campus have said that it's unreasonably expensive to live on campus in Dominican, or even the townhomes are more expensive. So if, not saying that Dominican should lower the prices, but like if it just was cheaper, would you pick to live on campus, or would you stay off campus? For either of you.
If the housing wasn't so expensive, I'm pretty sure it was $15,000 per year,
Something like that.
then I would definitely consider living there. But it's just out of my price range. It costs me a lot less to drive down 50 or 80 miles a day. What about you, Abby?
I agree. If it were cheaper, I would definitely live on campus again. And also with the meal plans, when you live on campus, that's another issue because our cafeteria is now open like 24/7. They have certain schedules, and sometimes we have classes during that time, and sometimes we're not able to eat during those times. So by living on campus, you do have to have that meal plan. So if it were cheaper, I would live there, but I'm still preferring like to live at home.
And another reason it's difficult for me to use the public transit systems to get there. Is from my house, it's 10 miles to the closest train station, so I'd have to find a way to travel 10 miles to the train station. It's possible for me to leave my car there, but then I'm still driving 20 miles a day. It's quite a bit. And then the closest bus stop to me is 4 miles away, and it only comes once every 4 hours. So if I have a class in the morning, I'm going to have to get there a few hours in advance if I want to be on time. And that's just unrealistic, unfeasible. All right. And the last problem that we're going to be talking about is problem number 1 that I brought up at the beginning. Adjusting back into the traditional in-person schooling format after having spent a year and a half learning the new independent study at home school format is really difficult because we suddenly have a lot less free time, as well as a few other problems.
Yeah, so I know everyone has gotten pretty comfortable in the last year and a half in just making their own schedule. I know for me, that was like, it started off like really productive, get everything done weeks in advance. And then it turned into like, wait to the last minute and get everything done before midnight. But just within that, I felt like I could really just make my schedule be whatever I wanted it to. So like it never stopped me from working throughout the entire time. Like I never would have worked like a full job with normal school and sports. I just felt like there wouldn't be time for me, but with COVID, like I felt like there was time to do all three. I just had to like move stuff around. So I was still working like 6 to 8 hour shifts, 4 days a week, and just moving my school stuff to when it suited me best, which is really nice. It was really nice to have that flexibility once I settled in and knew I could get everything done. Since we've been back though, I know Dominican's a small school, and so they have limited classes. And so I guess it's kind of, you get what you get in terms of the days and the times that you have class. But so like, for example, my Mondays are my busiest days. I have training from 9. Sometimes we have to be there by 8:30. So 8:30, go to training. That goes to 11 something. I actually have to leave early from training to go and make it to my first class, which goes from like 10:20 to 12 something. I have a small 10-minute break. Second class of the day, that one goes for an hour and 40. Third class of the day, and then so I'm out around 4, I think 3:40 or 4. Then we have optional workouts at Conlin, which everyone's encouraged to go to. So by the time I'm getting home, it's around like 6:30. So I take it's like 6:15, 6:30. I take like a 15-minute break to myself, and then because I'm technically new to the school, even though I'm a junior, I'm required to go to study hall, which is, for the athletes, we have to get X amount of hours. And so I end up turning around and going back with my roommate to study hall, which goes from 7 to 9. So realistically, on Mondays, usually Mondays and Wednesdays are my longest days. By the time I'm done, it's 9:15, 9:30. Come back, eat something, relax for like an hour, and then try to get to bed before 11:30. And then basically wake up and do a slightly shorter variation the next day, all the way through the week. Yeah, it's just been kind of rough having everything at a certain time and knowing that I don't actually get to pick or adjust like my own schedule. It's all based on other people's schedules again. And so it's been pretty stressful making sure that I still leave time, not only for homework, eating. Sometimes it's hard to remember to eat, and then also just having some time to relax, try to get a nap in or something to just get some energy. Especially on those Mondays, they can be pretty brutal by the end of my second class, and it's hard to keep going and make sure I show up to the third class. So.
Do you use any sort of calendar tools to help you manage your time?
Yeah, I have my own like personal schedule in Google Calendar, and then we have our athletic schedule that's given to us, which is super nice. So I don't have to like make it myself. So that's built in too. Yeah, I don't know if I have it right now, but like on Mondays and Wednesdays, it's like block to block. Like there's no breaks. But no, yeah, I do use Google Calendar because I know like if I didn't, I'd forget something. That's another thing is like having to use an external tool to like organize my time. Like with COVID, no way would I have used the Google Calendar. I would have like written it down on like a scrap of paper and put it in my room and remembered, just to get everything done. But yeah, no, I definitely need help trying to keep track of everything. You know, I think we're all a bit rusty at that. So
Google Calendar has been a lifesaver this year. How about you, Allie? Have you been using any sort of calendar tools to help you manage your time?
I use Google Calendar too. They put it on like our team schedule on Google Calendar, which is helpful. And I just put my classes on there so I know like where I need to be and what I'm doing.
Are you also a fan of Google Calendar, Abigail?
I am. I use it both for work and school and events in my life. So Google Calendar all the way.
uh, for the commuters, in terms of like adjusting back to school, I guess, like in-person stuff, is it basically like you start every day and you try to make it so that like basically because your entire day is at school, right? So you basically once you leave, you know that, or you try to schedule it so that you get everything done while you're at school, so that when you get back, it's like there's not really much that you have to do. Or do you try and like leave some work for home?
I try to even do my homework during class just to save me some time because I do get home pretty late and I don't like doing homework super late because I will not have the brain to do it. But yeah, I really try to get my work done while I'm at school opposed to doing it at home. Plus all the resources are at school as well. So yeah.
Mhm. Pretty similar to me. I try to get as much done at school as possible, but some of my days I only have one class. So I drive there for an hour and a half, and then I'm there for an hour and a half, and then I drive back for an hour and a half. So I just wait to do my homework till I'm at home. So I'm just kind of annoyed that I even have to go to classes that day. So I don't want to wait around too much longer. Uh, so I'm kind of used to just going there and then heading back right away too. But when I have time to go into the library and actually focus on my work at school, it's a lovely experience.
Okay. Do we want Abby to talk about who she interviewed and all that now? And then we'll move
Okay.
into that bit.
Okay. Okay. Are you gonna introduce it, Augustus, or should I just?
I think you should introduce it because I'm not sure what to
Yeah.
say.
Okay. So I interviewed two faculty members from Dominican. The first one is Naomi Evolve. She's the senior director and integrative coach and an academic counselor in Dominican. The first question I asked her was, are there any solutions for improving transfer and continuing students from adjusting back in person? And she responded, we had special events for transfer students and sophomores who had never been on campus, even though they've been here for a year, during an orientation. The transfer event was not well attended, but it was a dinner in Creekside with many staff members from various departments to answer questions. We also had new transfer students meet a peer mentor during orientation. We had a great, well-attended event for sophomores where we talked about adjusting, taking risks, diversity, and getting involved. We offered tours, played games, and had popsicles. We are inviting sophomores to attend the peer mentor-led events this year to continue to help them get engaged. The second question I asked her was, for transfer students, is there anyone they can contact to help with what is required for a smooth transition to Dominican? And she responded, transfer students can contact peer mentors or the Student Success Center to help with the transition. Unfortunately, we don't get lots of transfer students who take us up on the offer, so we are always looking for ideas and ways to have them connect more. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have them. And I thought that was really nice that, like, she offered if we do have thoughts about that. That's like really considerate of her to say. The second person I interviewed was Paul Racconello. He is the Vice President for Student Affairs and the Dean of Students in Dominican. The first question I asked him was, since the recent minor COVID outbreak, what has been done from Dominican to help prevent it from happening again? And he responded, there is nothing that Dominican can do to quote unquote prevent COVID outbreaks on campus. We can and are implementing policies and procedures aimed at mitigating the spread of COVID and reducing the impact on campus. And the responsibility for keeping the campus safe rests with everyone on campus. I will tell you that our contact tracing in the most recent spike in cases showed rather clearly that the spread between persons was mostly from student social activities and not being in classes. That being said, I will tell you that the peak of our cases, there were 17 people confirmed positive for COVID. There are roughly about 2,200 total members of our community, including students, faculty, staff, contractors, etc. Those 17 cases equate to a 0.7%, less than 1% positivity rate for the campus. From a public health perspective, these numbers are very good. The second question I asked him was, what led to Dominican having exceptions for unvaccinated people to attend in person? And he responded, we need to make vaccination exemptions available to or those who have a medical reason for not being able to be vaccinated, as well as those who have a religious request. All exemption requests are reviewed independently. Campus-wide faculty, staff, student, the number of persons with a vaccination exemption is very low, approximately 3% of the total campus population. So although both of these individuals have authority and they're seen as leaders who we can depend on in our school, they obviously haven't finalized solutions to our problems because they themselves are in the process of finding solutions to these ongoing problems. And it's really not their fault because the school is dependent on the county and people will always have disagreements on solutions that are needed because they have their own opinions on how to approach these problems.
Yeah, I feel like, especially from the email back from Paul, that it kind of seems like, I mean, I know we talked about theoretical solutions, but it sounds like that, they've considered those, and it's more of an instance where they don't have an end-all solution that would guarantee everyone's safety from ever contracting COVID while at Dominican. He's basically saying that's just not possible. What they can do is track it as effectively as possible. And I know that we saw that. I know like all the athletic teams were required to do a new form of testing at various times on one day so that they could track it and get back to us. I think they got back to us in 2 days, and from there on we knew everyone who had it. So they did a good job of pretty quickly responding and making sure that they at least knew, the trend. So if it was going to like start to get worse throughout the school, or if they had it contained. And I honestly think that they did a pretty good job containing everyone. I know anyone who had symptoms that was living with someone who had tested positive or wasn't feeling well was required to pull out of athletic events and classes and quarantine until they had negative PCR tests. And other than that, like he said in the second question, I guess that the school has felt the need to be a little bit more open and flexible with the exemptions, because obviously, like, we don't want to make for the medical, and that's pretty self-explanatory. Some people just don't respond well, and there's medical reasons for them to not get the vaccine, and it just seems that they kind of looked at it and decided that it was necessary to provide those exemptions. And as he said, regardless, it doesn't make up a very huge population of the school anyway. So it's a pretty minor group in perspective to the entire school.
And as you were saying, Sam, they are only able to come up with theoretical solutions right now. They can't come up with any definitive solutions because as a school and county, they're continuously evolving defined solutions to these unprecedented problems. And we're currently facing what can be considered a wicked problem, which is a problem that is difficult or nearly impossible to solve because of incomplete, contradictory, and actively changing requirements that are difficult to recognize and conform to. That sounds just like the COVID restrictions to me. These types of problems do not have a definitive formulation. They lack an inherent logic that signals when the problems are solved, and there's no real way to test the possible solutions to them. Coming up with a solution for the problems we're facing during COVID is nearly impossible because it's a wicked problem. I think that's a good conclusion right there.
What are we at for time?
We're past. We're like 35 right now.
Okay,
Okay.
I think we'll be good now.